My name is Monika Varma. I'm the Executive Director of the DC Bar Pro Bono Program. I previously served as the Director of the Center for Human Rights at the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights. In that position, I worked with social movement leaders around the world, partnering with them on social justice issues, including in India on the Dalit movement, working with Navsurjan, which is one of the leading Dalit organizations in the country. Untouchability is a practice, it's all pervasive in India amongst all religions, but it is primarily attributed to Hinduism and is the practice that segregates essentially the lowest caste within the caste system. The movement is, in the United States, we will refer to this caste often as untouchables, but the self-identified term is Dalit, which literally means broken people, but is really a term that the community and the movement has taken on to mean those who believe in equality. What I've witnessed in Gujarat was through a process of studying the issue. We did a very extensive study in nearly 1,600 villages in India, and we surveyed 99 practices of untouchability. And the stories were really heartbreaking, and the ones that really, I think, were the hardest to hear were the way that the children were treated. Children who went to school and then were forced to clean the toilet and couldn't sit in the classroom. Not being able to drink water within the school or having to go sit separately at lunchtime. There are pervasive issues with entries into temples. But again, that was the same, that happens in churches in India too. It has become a cultural phenomenon that isn't relegated to one religion. I think the manual scavenging stories are the hardest. These are women who, the way that some of the toilets in the rural system are, in the rural parts of Gujarat, they're set up is it's basically an open clearing where people will defecate. And someone who's forced to perform the manual scavenging, and often it's women who take their children with them, take the waste, they carry it in baskets on their head, and some of the most horrifying images are when it's raining and these women are carrying with their children these basically baskets of human waste on their head, and it's dripping down on their face. It is the worst way to live a life. I think there were a number of mistakes. I think the first thing I will say is that I think that Raman was he was well-intentioned within the water-carrier story. When at the beginning of the story, he talks about how he believes in equality, and he's listening to on the radio speeches about equality, and so he really sort of sees, well, I'm someone and I can make a difference. So I think the place that he's coming from is a good one, but it's not terribly well thought out. And I think some of the mistakes that he made were, one, he was only in the job for about 6 months before he took this decision. And so he really didn't understand the cultural context within which he was working. He didn't understand the nuances of the discrimination that was taking place within the new environment that he was in. He also didn't lay the groundwork for what he was doing. He didn't talk to the staff. He didn't do any education. He really didn't prep the situation at all. He sort of said, he almost made it personal, like, I'm going to show that I believe in equality and this is my stance, as opposed to what's good for Kishore. What does Kishore need to succeed? What does this organization, what does this business need to succeed so that we can comply with the laws, do the right thing, but also not impact the business and really shake things up in the way that he did. I've met Ramans in every part of the world, including here. Well-intentioned people who say, I believe in equality, and they're so focused on sort of their own personal stance that they're going to take that they lose sight of the community that they're serving. And that's true anywhere you go in the world, in any movement. People that are working within the movement or sort of outsiders coming in, do-gooders wanting to say, okay, well, I'll contribute to this or I'll support this, without really saying, well, what is it that you want? What is it what does success look like? I think it's the same as anyone going into a different part of the world or a different community. You're unfamiliar with what you're walking into. And even though you think you understand discrimination or you think you understand untouchability, it looks different in every community. It looks different in different neighborhoods, and let alone different cities or different parts of the country. And so he walked into a situation where he didn't stop to understand it. And in the opening part of that case study, one of his colleagues says, things are different here. And to really understand what that means before taking action would have been very important. And I think there are no guarantees in this situation that there would be success, but I think there were a number of steps that Raman could have taken to get closer to success and to move the ball forward. I think the first thing is to start with Kishore and to sit down when he's being hired, to let him know what he's walking into. And that would have been a dialogue that started from the moment he interviewed him, and it would have been a process of several conversations before he got there and once he got there. The other thing that would have been critical is educating the staff, letting them know what the laws are, having some conversations about untouchability. And I'm not naive in thinking that you're going to change people's perceptions, but to understand that this is the direction that the business is going in. This is where the bank needs to go because the law comes from where it is. And people don't need to, you're not going to change people's opinions or their sort of, if they've got a discriminatory stance, that's where they're going to stay. But to bring them to a point where they understand that this is the law, this is where the organization's going, and this is what's expected of you as an employee. The other thing he could have done is to talk to Charan Singh, who was the union leader, who he assumed believed in equality. He didn't have a conversation with him, but he said, oh, he seems like a good socialist, so therefore he will support me. And had a conversation too late. So to have a conversation, to bring Charan Singh on board and say, this is where the company is going. It is going to affect the members of your union. How do we get through this? And to come up with Charan Singh with a way to communicate with the union members, to find out how it is that the education should take place. And not to change the stance, not to say, well, they're not going to take water from Kishore, so that's the end of the story, but to say this is what's coming. And so that he was really blindsided by the fact that they all decided to go outside or to slow down their work. He didn't have a plan in place, and he should have. He should have thought about, okay, this is an act that this is a stance we're taking. This is what's going to happen. And if he had done his education, if he had had the conversations with the employees, he would have known what was coming. And he still should have done what he did, which was to comply with the law and to do the right thing. But he could have said, okay, well, if they slow down, then I have support from my higher-ups to start firing people, or whatever that may be. And to also let Kishore know, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what they're going to react against you. And Kishore would never have been blindsided. I mean, Kishore probably had a sense, but he was also hopeful that this might be different. And there is usually a support network in most parts of the country amongst the Dalit community to also make sure that Kishore was the right person to take that on, because he really was a test case. And whenever I've worked with social movements and they take on advocacy or a position that is going to put someone within that movement in an uncomfortable situation or in a harmful situation, there's a lot of work done to prepare them and to make sure that they're really ready to take this on and to understand what the implications will be for him personally in a worst case scenario, if there was going to be impact on his family or on the larger community. That's groundwork that would have been important to lay before the stance was taken. It could happen today in different parts of India. It won't happen in every part of India. There are parts of India where that will happen today, and it probably happened last month. It is an ongoing issue because, again, there are well-intentioned people like Raman out there who want to do the right thing, but don't think it through. And there are, from the study that we did in Gujarat, water is one of the areas of untouchability practice that is most pervasive, in that non-Dalits do not want to take a glass of water in many parts of the country from a Dalit. And so it is the specific types of untouchability that we see in the case are very relevant today. I think for those who are going into India and will encounter this, it's important that they go in understanding how different India is and where they're working in India. It is not homogenous. It's 1 billion people with a number of states, and each state is almost like its own country. And so to understand the context of where someone is working, what the discrimination looks like in that community, to have open conversations about it, and to find allies that are supportive, to have those conversations, and most importantly, to really engage the community that you're trying to work with. So if you were in Raman's position and you wanted to hire Kishore, it would be really important to talk to Kishore and other people within the community to say, you know, is this the best first job that we should test this on? Is this, if we're going to move towards better integration, what does that look like for you? So that there's a much better chance of success. If you looked at the laws, if you looked at the people in power from the Dalit community, from the outside it would look like there was a lot of change. And I think within the younger generation, you will also notice some change in mentality. But it hasn't moved enough. There has not been, there has been very limited, in-depth recognition and discussion about this problem. It is a source of shame. If you talk to Indian Americans in the United States, they'll say, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. There's no caste system. Because when they go to India, and this was true of me as well, we didn't know about it. So you didn't know that the person coming in to clean the toilet in the house was from the Dalit community. You just thought that was the person that came in and cleaned. And to the outside, you can cover it up. If you don't understand the issue, it's very easy to look at India and think we've progressed. But if you talk to the community and if you talk to the Dalit leaders, they will say that we have a very, very long way to go.